Susie, you're known both on and off the track for breaking barriers for young women in motorsport, taking part in a time session in Formula One with Williams, to now leading the way in F1 Academy, being the managing director. What I'd like to start off with is knowing your reflection on the past, to know when you truly felt like you belonged in motorsport.
Well, that's a really good question, because I've been in motorsport nearly my whole life. I got on a little motorbike at the age of 2, started racing karts at 8, and I found my passion really early. I never really realized that I was doing something unusual for a girl, and I need to thank my parents for that, because I have an older brother, but they never differentiated between son and daughter or made me feel the expectations were different being a daughter. So I started karting. I was that competitive little girl that loved speed, that loved the adrenaline, and I really found that thing I loved doing. And at the age of 8, you're not thinking about a career. You're not thinking about really the future. You do what you love in the moment. So I always feel really grateful that I had the environment around me that allowed me to find that passion, that helped nurture my talent through the world of motorsport. And of course, in our sport, you wear a helmet, so it's not always obvious that you are the only girl. But I think my journey in the sport, I hope, has inspired. I certainly feel grateful to be in this position now with F1 Academy, that we can create more opportunities for young women, for them to see that there's an environment which isn't as male-dominated as they probably think. But to answer your question, I never felt I didn't belong. There were definitely tough moments, but I was doing something I loved, and so that for me was at the core of even all the difficult times.
I love that it wasn't even an option that you would think that you wouldn't belong there. And it's been great teaming up with TeamViewer, the first tech partner of F1 Academy. And they're not just talking the talk, they're putting in invested time. They've teamed up with Loughborough University London to do this campaign of women in sport tech. And it's really revealed that some people feel like there's no visible role models. Have you had a visible role model yourself that you're able to think, yeah, I'm going to follow what they're doing?
Well, firstly, how lucky we are to have partners like TeamViewer, because we know we have the possibility to create very positive impact in this sport, but we need people on the journey with us, and we need people who really are authentic about tackling the barriers and the issues, who are not just turning up to tick a box or to put their logo somewhere. And it's by doing this research that we can really understand, what do we need to do to be successful long term? What do we really need to do to get more women into this sport on and off track? So growing up, I had very few role models to look up to, apart from my mum, who was a great role model. But in the sport, nearly nobody. And I believe in the power of seeing and then believing, because that's what can inspire a whole generation. And that's one of the problems that we need to tackle. But I'm proud that the young women racing now in F1 Academy, they can be role models, because just going out there and racing like they do, zipping up a Ferrari race suit, a McLaren, a Mercedes race suit, and jumping in a what looks like a miniature F1 car on an F1 Grand Prix weekend, that's really powerful imagery.
And then talking about that powerful imagery, how important do you think it is for them to see successful women in these senior positions?
Well, successful women within organizations can change a whole culture, because they allow those in the organization who are up and coming to see, well, it's possible, because if she can do it, then maybe I can do it. And I've always been quite open about trying to nurture the next generation of talent. It's not always easy, sometimes juggling motherhood, juggling the ambition that I still have. But by talking about it, and by being open, and by trying to inspire others to see, well, I'm no different to you, and if I can do it, that means you can also do it, I think is really important. And women within leadership positions, I think, can play a really important role for the next generation, believing that maybe they're capable of much more than they once thought.
And looking at stepping into what has been a male-dominated environment, have you ever yourself felt that you've had to adapt the way you turn up to things? So you come across that you've got this authenticity that you can lead with your own style of leadership, but have you ever felt you've had to adapt to that style?
Absolutely. With age comes experience, but it's why I feel so privileged in the role now, because I know what these young women are going through in F1 Academy, because I've been there. And I remember a time I'd just been signed by Mercedes-Benz for German touring cars, and suddenly I was being flown around the world representing one of the biggest and best car manufacturers in the world. And I thought, well, how should I dress? I don't want to look too feminine, because maybe I'm not taken seriously. but I don't want to really look like a tomboy because I'm not a tomboy. I also loved Barbie growing up. I love, clothes and looking elegant. And that was a real battle for me of trying to navigate this world where I wanted to be taken seriously, but I also wanted to represent and do my job in the best way I could. And it was definitely my husband that helped me in that one. We came together and he just said, be you. And whatever you is, be you and own it, because it's much harder work trying to be someone else or to think too much about what your clothes say about you or what you're trying to project when you go somewhere. And that's something that now for the next generation with F1 Academy, we have a great partner who's a makeup brand. And I said to them, you wear as much or as little makeup as you want, because nobody's judging you on how you look. Those stereotypes we have to forget. This is about you being you and celebrating your individuality, because how you dress and how you look makes no difference to how fierce you are when you put your racing helmet on.
Have you had a moment where you feel like you've had to step in and say you are trying to be something you're not and be authentic?
Definitely. And I also have to remember that these young women in F1 Academy, they're on a journey. They're also discovering themselves. Some of them are still very young, some of them are slightly older, but we also see the transition from year 1 to year 2 where they found more confidence, and I can see them coming out of their shell more and finding themselves more. But I'm always trying to be quite open with them and guide them, but at the same time understand that it's also a journey and you can't implement everything or give them too much advice too early, which makes them insecure. But I hope we've created an environment where they feel they can be who they are, and that we've created an environment that's nurturing for their talent, but also makes them feel like they belong.
And you say about nurturing talent. We've also, from this report, found that women feel reluctant to actually step forward in a business and go for job progression if they're not seen to be ticking every requirement needed. How have you instilled that there is clear progression and a place for women to progress?
Well, when I see talent in my team, and I have a lot of talented people around me for which I'm very grateful, I always put them forward for things where maybe they think, well, that's not my position or my role to do, because I see the potential that they have. And I think it's also about when you're in an organization, if you feel that someone isn't always going to be pushing, well, give them the chance to show what they're capable of more. And I certainly like to empower the people around me and make sure that they have their moment to shine and their moment to bring their ideas to the table, even if they're not the same as my ideas, because sometimes those different ideas all put together can bring an even better the result than initially thought.
So how can then, if you have that style yourself and you have that encouragement, how would you recommend that for companies to instill that in their business strategy?
Well, I always try and just remember that every person is an individual. What success looks like for one may not be the same as success for another. And I definitely also from Total learned it comes down to the people around you and having empathy for them and compassion for them. What are they going through in their lives and how can I make it better so they can be a better version of themselves? And I'm lucky in that I have quite a small team, because obviously that is something which is time consuming, but I want to create an environment where they feel they can excel. And of course, within much bigger companies, it's harder as a leader to instill a culture because there's sometimes thousands and they sit globally in different headquarters. But I do think that culture and the way you create the environment for your team comes down to the leadership at the top of creating it. And I remember when I first joined my Formula E team, I had just become a mother. It was impossible that I was going to be in the office every day 9 to 5. And suddenly I found that I'd created the most diverse team in top level motorsport, because I said to my team, I don't care if you're in the office 9 to 5 every day, because I can't be. But what I do care is that you do your job to the best you can. And I won't judge you if you have to take your son or your baby to a doctor's appointment, but just do your job really well, because that's all that matters in the end. And suddenly we created an environment where we had a lot of women who felt very empowered to do the job on their terms. And they were brilliant at what they did. So we got the success that we needed on track.
And I think that's just going to highlight how to retain that talent that you already have on board. You don't need to seek the talent, you've got them. And by offering that flexible option, you keep the talent where they're needed. And you've also talked about culture there. From our report, it showed 90% of women said they needed that inclusive culture. And actually by having that, it drove innovation within a team. How are you implementing that innovative aspect into F1 Academy within your team?
Well, we are incredibly lucky that we have the opportunity to create something that I never thought I would see in my lifetime in the sport. A female-only race series owned by Formula One on Formula One weekends with the 10 Formula One teams. And we can be bold, and we know we need to disrupt. We can't do the same as everyone's always done within motorsport, and that allows us to come up with the bold ideas, to think differently. What can we do? And there always has to be an authenticity at the core. You know, we don't want to just do crazy things which then don't make us look that we've got the long picture inside. But I think in the short term, we've achieved so much in a short space of time, but my feet are very much on the ground. We've got the mid-term plan and the long-term plan, and we need to get more young women into the sport. We need to unearth all this younger talent. We need to be down inspiring the next generation. And we certainly hope a pivotal moment for us will be our Netflix documentary series. We'll reach a whole new audience and hopefully force them to think about the sport differently. And then it's up to us to create the opportunities and make sure that the most talented women can progress in the sport.
And with the waves that you're making with F1 Academy, can you see that bleeding out into other motorsports too? Have you seen a massive difference from when you were in F1, for instance, to how you are now if you go into the paddock?
I see it most definitely, and I hope it can transition not just into other sports, but also into other industries. Because many industries are facing the same challenges that motorsport does. Very male-dominated, very difficult to recruit young women into the organisations. And I do think diversity of opinion is powerful in an organisation, that you're getting everyone's thoughts on the table, and that needs to come from a diverse group of people. And I think we can be very proud, I certainly am, that Formula One, the sport I love, has created F1 Academy, because it's recognised that 42% of its global fan base is now female. Its fastest growing fan demographic, the 18 to 24-year-old female. So there's a lot of women out there that love this sport, and they should see that the sport they love is creating opportunity for young women and showing that it's no longer just a man's world.
And talking about making space for women and how we can attract them to positions and retain them, are there anything that businesses could be doing to support women through various stages of their life? We know we go through numerous transitions where we do need more of that flexible work-life balance. So if you could offer any advice to businesses, what would that be?
Well, I think every business is individual to its own challenges. I certainly, having become a mother myself, think that there's a world where young women who become mothers need to be given the chance to come back into the workforce. And if that means there's more flexibility, if that means there's childcare options, I think it's a huge opportunity, because there's a lot of talented women who need to find a balance in their life that they can deal with motherhood at the same time as hanging on to the ambition they have in their careers. And I think there's a huge opportunity for businesses to create more of an environment where this female talent can come back into the workforce and do what they do really well. And if that means it's flexibility, if that means it's better childcare options, I think that would be a small investment for the huge talent that you would be able to retain and bring back into your organisation.
It's a global motorsport platform. So how have you juggled that throughout your career?
Well, I'm not going to lie, it's been very challenging at times, particularly because my role involves travel. So when my son was very young, I simply brought him with me, which was easier, and I had childcare help. But now that he's in school, I'm very lucky that my parents and his grandparents have stepped in to help. But my husband often says my main job is logistics manager of the family, because I'm managing his schedule, my schedule, the childcare. But that's part and parcel. And I very much felt when I became a mother that I didn't want to lose myself. I had a lot of ambition still. And at the same time, I wanted to be the best wife and mother that I could be. So that does mean lots of balls in the air. And I won't lie, I drop the balls sometimes and have moments where I think, oh, this is just a lot to manage. But fundamentally, I love what I do. So my job doesn't feel in a way that it's a negative, it's a positive in my life. So I just need to manage all my priorities. And I got very good at saying no. So if there's something which I would maybe love to do, but think, okay, it's another day away from home, or it's not top of my priority list, I've got very good at just staying very focused on what's going to make a difference.
Even that can be an uncomfortable thing to do, can't it? But no is a full sentence, and I think that's something to keep in mind.
And you will get FOMO.
Yes,
but
yes.
You get over it, I promise.
Especially in the world of motorsport, you never want to miss out. But yes, that life-work balance has to come into play. I've loved hearing your insights into all of this. So if we could just leave the watchers with one lasting comment, what would you advise people to do if they're watching this now and they could implement something into their workplace tomorrow to make a more inclusive environment for women? What would that be?
Well, I think firstly for the people watching, my advice when I look back to my younger self, believe in yourself. Whatever you're doing, whatever path you're on, you need to be your own biggest champion. So put yourself in the best possible position for success. Prepare, be the best version of you, because that's all you can ever be. And just focus on your own journey and not be too distracted by all the noise in the world now of what everyone else is doing. Your journey, turn up, be the best you. Within organizations, it's difficult because every organization is different, but if you see talent and you see that there's opportunity for that talent to grow, I always try and just make sure that it's an environment where I can bring in the best people, retain them and help them grow on their journey, because that also gives me a lot of fulfillment.
Thank you, Susie.